Hello, and welcome back to another episode for the Project Seed Money podcast. My name is Sharissa Bradley, and I am so excited to be joined today with author A-M Mawhiney. Thank you so much for being here with me today and spending a little bit of time with me.
I'm so thrilled to be with you, Sharissa.
Oh,
It's so nice to spend some time with you.
Thank you so much. I want to get started and ask, have you always wanted to be an author?
Well, funny story there. When I was 8 years old, I told my parents I wanted to be a writer. And I actually recently found a copy of a newspaper that I wrote on an old-fashioned typewriter. No opportunity to copy it, but it had poetry. I wrote very dark poetry. And then one day I said to my dad, I want to be a writer, but nothing I read comes from where we're living. So I don't think I can be. And rather serendipitously, he said, and it was the truth, his aunt's husband, who lived further north, but like 2 hours away from here, had written a couple in the series of the Hardy Boys, which I was reading, and under an assumed name. And he said, so you can be a writer here. And that inspired me because I was ready to give up. Then in high school, I wrote a lot of short stories, and there was a compulsory one in grade 10. We all had to write 3,500 words. And I know, and I got 97 and I lost grades for a couple of typos. And I thought, oh, she's an easy marker, but it turned out she wasn't. And she was very encouraging. Suzanne LeMay was her name. But then when I headed off to university, I had decided to take social work because I wasn't sure what writing would do for a career path. And the creative side kind of dried up for a very, very long time, like 60 years. When I retired, I pictured traveling and, doing what I wanted. Then COVID came. And I'm a COVID writer, motivated by COVID. A lot of people apparently are. I was going a little bit cabin feverish, to put it nicely, during the first lockdown when we weren't even sure if it was safe to put our nose outside. And I was watching all this stuff on TV. And one day I thought, no, I can't keep doing this. So I pulled out an old dusty laptop, opened it up, and I thought, well, okay, I'm going to journal. That's not going to do much for me. But the first sentence that came out is still the first line in my first book. And it's when she awoke, it was with such joy in her heart. And I was completely flummoxed. It was like, where did that come from? And what's it about? And why is she happy? So I decided that I needed some fresh air. And I went for a short walk. It wasn't totally kosher, but the next week we were allowed to do that. And I thought, well, I'm going to keep this going. I don't know where it'll wind up. And after about a year and lots of rewriting, I had a book. And it was in a world I would never have thought I'd write science fiction fantasy. It takes place roughly 50 years from now, that book. And I built a world that I wanted to live in. So it was a sheer escape for me from the reality.
What a very interesting way into it. And I have interviewed people who said that that COVID gave them the time and the space. And it does sound like that's a familiar story, but it also seems like the stories that were meant to be shared were just like put on the backs of the women and these people who were given the time and the space now to do it. And so I do think, even though I started writing during COVID, it has been a slightly different journey for everyone that I've asked.
Mhm.
And I am often hearing I didn't have the time. The creativity was stuck in the grind. And now with the time and the space to do it, I think that's so incredible. And also that it was fantasy, and how wonderful. Had you been a reader in that space, the fantasy science fiction space?
I had been through university and as a child. Um, the Dune books, the various kinds of standard books. But I more lean to historical fiction and sort of more academic things. My career was as an academic, so a lot of my reading was not fiction. But to escape from the reality, I had to go someplace completely different, but still rooted in my community's history. At the time, I didn't realize that I was doing that. But when I started to hand it out to former colleagues, they said, well, you're telling the early days 100 years later. So I'm in a mining community that was totally horrifically devastated by pollution. And 50 years ago, researchers in the whole community came together and did a regreening. And we're known now all over the world as a ray of hope for kind of putting the world back. And so that was an inspiration, but it was an unconscious one.
How fascinating. And you only found that out in hindsight because of the other
Yeah,
people who are reading? Wow, that's
yeah,
cool.
yeah.
That is so cool. I wonder, what was your publishing path like? Once you had that draft, where did you go from there? What was your ultimate publishing path?
Okay, so all of this to me was a big experiment. As an academic, I'd been writing. I attended the Humber College summer workshop in writing that year. It was by Zoom. And one of the places was how to get published. And the message was, if you don't have a track record in your genre, it'll be 5, 10, 15 years. Well, at my age, I wasn't too impressed with that. I respected that, but I had no time for that. And I really wanted at this point to get the book published. So that night, I how to get a book published into the computer. And a place came up, said, download this, we can guide you. I downloaded it. I had to give contact information, got a call. And it's a place in Canada that supports self-publishing authors. So all of my books are self-published. But like all publishers, I have to contract with editors, proofreaders, designers, people that'll push the switch up to wherever it's going to the bookstores. I knew nothing. I knew absolutely nothing. And we talked off and on, no pressure, for several months. And then I said, okay, I'm ready. Mhm. And that, for me, FriesenPress is the place that I contracted with, a one stop for everything. And the education they gave me through the process of promotions and everything else really converted me from a naive, I'm going to publish and then I can get back to retirement, to really what's a second career.
Wow, that's incredible. And I
Yeah.
interviewed Leanne Jansen from Friesen Press a few months ago. She's on this podcast and she
Yeah.
does explain like their whole onboarding process and how they help navigate
Mhm.
that for authors. So I just think how cool that we have now an experienced author that can attest to that process.
Absolutely. Absolutely. all three books went that route with them. And every time they added layers to my knowledge. And it's just astonishing when I look back to the arguments I had with my promotions coach, who was very patient, saying, "No, I'm not into social media." And he says, "Well, you have to be." And now I feel quite comfortable there. Like I'm kind of an introvert, but I've been able to kind of get out of my shell that way.
Oh, that's
And
amazing.
it's truly amazing the way that they educated me about the whole process and encouraged me and had frank discussions about the manuscript and things like that. That particular book, they wanted me to lose 90 pages and they were going to line me up with somebody. And I edited as an academic other people's work. So I called back a week later and said I got rid of 90 pages. And they said, "Oh, okay, we'll have another look at it and see where we are." And then we move forward.
I love the support. I love the hand holding, but then also the empowerment that you get to keep all your rights, keep
Yes.
everything in your name and really have that power behind being self-published because you know as well as I do, sometimes errors pop up. And when you have control, you get to fix those things versus having all of these walls and barriers between you and your published work. So I think that's very empowering. And I got that message when I interviewed her as well. And I just, the
Mhm.
Leanne Jansen, and I just think that that's such a cool way to do it. They're really legitimate. They've been around forever, like 100 years or something. Like they're not going anywhere.
And I like to control my own creativity, my own writing, even as an academic. And not that I've had the experience, but traditional publishers want to craft something that fits their way of telling stories. And this with FriesenPress is helping me shine a light on my story and craft it into the best story I can. But it's still my story because I break a lot of plot rules and a lot of other kinds of rules, but it still comes together well, apparently.
That's amazing. I wonder if during your journey through, even from the beginning to all the way through publishing and now having three works in the world, did you face self doubt or vulnerability during the publishing process or after the fact?
It's kind of funny during the writing time. I was operating completely from a level of arrogance. I'm a good writer. I can do this. I didn't know I was going to publish. It was an experiment. But the day I got the note saying, "Congratulations, you're published," from my contact at FriesenPress, the vulnerability was definitely there. It was like, "Oh, what have I done? Now it's out to the world. What are people going to think? Have I made a fool of myself? The story's probably not that great." And then I kind of soothed myself by saying, "Oh, probably nobody will read it anyway." And then within a couple of month period, I heard from two people, two authors, one who wrote almost right away and sent me a long note through my website saying, "This is an amazing story, and if you're okay, I'd like to write to Goodreads." And you don't need my permission for that. And then the second person wrote and said, "You built a world I would love to live in. You have to write more. You have to write more about this world." And I wasn't thinking of other books. I thought I was one and done. And both those authors and I have become friends through the process, and I've read their books. And like they're amazing authors, P.L. Stewart and A-M Smith Nooksack. So that kind of soothed me. I thought, well, 2 people read it, 2 people liked it, and off I went.
That's incredible. I love that they felt comfortable to reach out and just give that encouragement, because as an author myself, I can tell you that one comment will fuel a whole other
Yes.
yeah, just one nice thing said is really all it takes sometimes.
When I'm having a bad day with writing, I go back and read those reviews and other like heartwarming reviews that I've received for all 3 books. And then that keeps me going.
That is so encouraging. I'm so glad you mentioned that. And I do hope that our listeners will feel encouraged to reach out to the authors that they love, because sometimes just hearing that can just brighten our whole journey.
It's right. It's really important.
Yes. I think this is kind of the perfect time for me to ask, where can my audience find you and your books?
Okay, so I'm on Instagram, I'm on Blue Sky, I'm on Threads, I'm on X Twitter, uh, and I have a website that is www.ammawhiney.com. No, .ca. And they can contact me through that, through my publicist, Mickey Mickelson. Yeah.
Perfect. And I just have one last question for you. I wonder if you have any advice for my audience. They are female authors, they're on the fence, and maybe it is fear that's stopping them from writing their first book. And I wonder if you can just encourage them to keep going on their journey.
I'm going to suggest something that when I was writing a dissertation, somebody suggested to me. Women are busy, multitasking all over the place, and their calendars are chocked full. And my advice is find the first 2-hour block you can find, put a great big red X through it, and put meeting with capital M dot capital E dot, and then find the next time, and then find the next time. And the first time you see a half day or a full day, do the same. If you have a partner, your partner will have to understand that that is time that you will not be available. And you treat those X'd out spots like a doctor's appointment. If somebody says, hey, want to get together for lunch? You say, oh, I'm sorry, I'm busy that time. Let's book another time. And if you do that, you carve out the time like I had during COVID, where there's space. You can go for a walk, you can do whatever you want to kind of get your thoughts going. And at some point, you're going to have to open the laptop or whatever you're going to use and just start, and not worry about being perfect. Just start and keep going. And then go for another walk, sip a cup of whatever you drink, coffee, tea, hot chocolate in my case, and just keep going and keep that time for yourself as if it's a doctor's appointment.
That is such good advice, and I hope that my audience will take it. I do things like that for myself to give myself days off. Otherwise, I just never take breaks. So I absolutely love that advice. And I've loved my time with you today. I just want to say thank you so much for being here and being on my podcast, Anne Marie. It's been such a pleasure.
I've really enjoyed myself. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for joining me on another episode for Project Seed Money. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. It really helps the channel. And I will see you with another interview next week. Bye.